It is our pleasure to have the Honorable Minister for National Security, Brigadier General Carl Alfonso, with us.
And Brigadier Alfonso, we did not give you an introduction as we gave Rafiq Shah an exuberant introduction, but as well, we remind our listeners that we just, at the top of your head would be Minister of National Security, but he was also the commanding officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment and the first enlisted man to ascend to the position of Chief of Defense Staff, where he served from 1994 to 1999. He also served as aide-de-camp to former President Nur Hassan Ali. He was Director of the Prime Minister's Residence at the Diplomatic Center, Director General of the National Security Training Academy, newly formed. I think it was before he came as National Security Minister. But going straight from Ralph's discussion, I think out of it, most importantly, is that 45 years later, the Army's Support and Service Battalion remains down at Chaguaramas, where we all know the average Fet goer to Chaguaramas know it's one road in, one road out. It was a base designed for the Americans to feel safe but in their corner there, but not for our national security. So how we know that there were plans in 2006, an area of land was allocated in Felicity, which is central Trinidad, to relocate the Support Services Battalion, but nothing has been done since then. You've now come into the chair as National Security Minister at a time when the land has been or is being distributed. Okay? I want you to address from your Army perspective, because I know you feel constrained a little bit as National Security Minister to tell us certain things. From the Army perspective, how insecure we are, really. You can see it clearly as an average citizen that we are insecure because of the location of the Support Services Battalion.
Well, I wouldn't agree with you. The Support and Service Battalion, or the SSB as we call it, is there to service and support the fighting troops, if you will. So the fighting troops are not in Tetron. Now everybody is trained to fight, yes? The band, the nurses, the clerical people, they're all trained to fight. But if we had to fight, and when we have to fight, the first people to fight would be the 1st Battalion or the 2nd Battalion.
1st Battalion is located at Camp Ogden?
Camp Ogden.
Okay.
2nd Battalion is at present on the base. But they're moving. Within the next couple of months, they will be out of there. They should have been out of there long ago.
Out of Chaguaramas, that is?
They're moving out of Chaguaramas. Okay. And they're moving more into central Trinidad, central South Trinidad. But Tetron was always, when I went to Tetron in 1963, before RAF, it was a temporary base. And we were told it was going to be a temporary base. It is still a temporary base. And most of us military-minded people would prefer not to have a military installation in Tetron. Coast Guard is okay in Stobles Bay, they can defend the bay and so on, but Tetron is great for training, for recruit training, where you're isolated from the rest of the world. And that's how it should be. You're confined for about 14 to 16 weeks or whatever. So you don't see too many civilians, and you're just there amongst your trainees, your fellow trainees, or your batch, as we call it. And that makes it good for bonding and working as a team. I remember enduring my recruit training and bonding with all those fellows that I'd never seen in my life before. But that works well for, as I said, for training. Having passed out as a recruit, then you go out, go further afield. You don't stay in Tetron unless you're administrative type or clerical type or the band, you know. So yes, the fighting elements are not in Tetron, but they can fight, as I said, if they had to.
So what would be the support services? What would the support services battalion? And I want to ask you that, and I usually I'm asking two questions at a time because of the thing. I go back to 1990. You were in charge of the support services battalion during the 1990 attempted coup, yes. And during the Commission of Inquiry, you spoke about, communication issues. Mm-hmm. And I wondered, now it could have been more than that, but I wondered, was your location down there at the end of Chaguaramas, and all of this was happening in Port of Spain, with the army being called out to quell a coup? The Prime Minister and his cabinet is under duress or kidnapped or in the House of Representatives. From that perspective, I also want you to explain about the Support Services Battalion.
Well, yes, the battalion was and still is in Tetron, and I was the commanding officer in 1990. And when we got the news, well, just by the way, the communication wasn't the best. There were no cell phones in those days. Hard to believe, but there were no cell phones, These youngsters can't live without cell phones. There were no cell phones, and most of our handheld radios seemed to give trouble with, I think they call them crystals or the battery or something. I'm not a communications person, and I don't know much about the technology. I know that when I got home in Westmoreland at the time, the neighbors were telling me, were asking me what's going on. I'm still in uniform. I just come from Tetron, heading to the stadium to go and watch football, not having a clue that something was going on in Port of Spain until they pointed out that the sky was red and they were burning up some place in town. I didn't know what place it was. And the first person I spoke to try and make some sense out of this thing was Hugh Vidal, my contemporary, who was in charge of the 1st Battalion. Trying to get through the camp out then at the best of times is almost impossible. But that day, I got through the first try. And I asked a very simple question. Hugh, I just heard something. He said, yes, it's true. And that was the end of the conversation.
So you had to return to Tetron and Chagrin?
Immediately. Yeah. Immediately. I used to drive myself. I bounced my starter, as they say, and went straight back down the road. Soldiers started coming in from every which way because they had heard. I remember one little girl, I call her little girl, she's a big woman now, of course. Her name was Sharmain Grant, she's now Sharmain Jack. She's a very senior person, an enlisted personnel in the Coast Guard. And she came from Faizabad, where she had heard something. And I asked her, Jack, what are you doing? Grant, what are you doing here? She said, I hear they have action in town. So she was coming in to fight. All the soldiers who were returning to camp came in there to fight whoever disrupted the democracy of this country. I knew what was in my head. I knew what I was trained to do. And I wanted to do just that, to put down the insurrection very, very, very decisively. I still have my grouses about how things turned out. Hugh Vidal was the person, the lieutenant colonel, on the ground, in charge of the 1st Battalion. So he was the first to fight, if you will. Some of us wondered why Hugh didn't take a more decisive type of action. I stormed the Red House, killed all the people and so on. And some people are saying that might not have been the best decision because Mr. Robinson and others might have been killed. I remember responding and remarking that, okay, so they get killed. But we would be in charge, not Abu Bakr and his people. They couldn't stay in the Red House and tell us what to do outside. But there were politicians outside who seemed to control things and seemed to advise and so on.
Who took a position at Camp Ogden, no less.
I was a little confused. I wanted to come in down, but I couldn't leave my battalion because my battalion would have been headless. So I sent up, and it came out in inquiry, 50,000 rounds of ammunition, extra ammunition for Hugh, knowing that Hugh would have to fight and would have to win the firefight. So I sent up my partner Hugh. I sent up 50,000 extra rounds of 7.62 ammunition and 30 B-300 rockets. Very similar to what Raf spoke about the Carl Gustav. When you fire one rocket from the B-300, you don't want to hear another one. So I sent up 30 of those just to ensure that we would be in charge and would be on top of the situation. Things didn't go as we thought it would go, and maybe it was a good thing that not too many other lives were lost. But the bad news is Abu Bakr and his people killed a set of people going into the Red House and police station and so on, police headquarters. Not one single Muslimin was killed, not one. I still don't understand why. But I suppose one day Hugh Vidal might be able to explain to me and to the nation why he didn't do what we thought he might have done.
And I am actually sitting here pretty much shell-shocked that he's actually saying all of this, that you would have gone in with full firepower and that's it.
I would have gone in because I had heard the Prime Minister say attack with full force.
Okay, so but now you're in the National Security Minister's chair. what can you do to the support services battalion is locked down in that corner in Tetron, and you would have felt as commanding officer pretty much isolated down there.
Mm-hmm.
Communication or not, because the communication will depend on the person who's on the front line asking for that.
Yeah.
Then, if Abu Bakr back in the day was, as Raf is saying now, if he would have been smarter, if Abu Bakr was more serious about it, he could have blocked off at some point that road.
Oh, yes.
And locked off the entire army from coming out. And that's 25 years on.
Yeah, RAF could have, that Carl Gustav would have destroyed the Coast Guard vessel.
Yeah.
It's an anti-tank weapon. The
Yeah.
Coast Guard vessel's armament would not have been able to withstand one shell, possibly. And if they had to fire more than one, the Coast Guard vessel would have been history.
But 25 years later, why is it still at a temporary base? What can you say from the position that you are at now? What moves can be made to secure the support services battalion, which is critical to the army?
Up to when I left in 1999, we had been hearing and we had been promised by different governments that, yes, we would move out at some stage. We never did up to when I left in 1999. I didn't know of this acquisition of land in Felicity.
2006, yes.
Yeah, 500 acres or whatever. I heard that when I became a minister. And people were wondering why hasn't the army done anything with this land that they've had for 10 years? So I said, what are you talking about? They said, well, they have. I said, no. I really don't ask the army what they're doing these days. And they said, yes, you have 500 acres for the past 10 years. I said, and what have they been doing? They said, nothing. I said, why haven't they done anything with it? And some of the people asking those questions said, well, we don't know. You might know. I said, I don't know, but I can find out. But I suspected that they hadn't done anything with the land. They hadn't built anything because of funding. So there's no money to build whatever they wanted to build. And there are plans there. I have seen some of the plans now. So they are going to have to move out of Tetron. I was hoping it would happen in my time. It probably will, I don't know.
But generally, I would say that
I know they have to move on.
There's a lack of political will, Mr. Minister, but you are in a position now where you can...
To make it happen?
Yes, you can shake some people. We would assume the Minister of National Security can say, guys, let's wake up on this.
You have to understand the Minister of National Security is just one member of the team. There is a team, and I can't go against what the team might be thinking.
Maybe it's time that the team woke up a little bit. We are constrained, unfortunately, with time again. And I do want to quantum leap, Sharmain, if it's all right, into what happened on Friday. On Friday, you tabled the day of policing disturbed the nation. A lot of productivity was lost. A lot of people felt that they were being held to ransom. Your statement is one that raised some eyebrows. You said what occurred in the day of policing is a clear and present danger. Many argue that clear and present danger, the term deliberately used, means immediate remedial measures are being taken. That's my question for you.
The question is, what
measures are being taken to eliminate this clear and present danger, and why you use such a strong term?
Maybe that's how I felt at the time. And let me just say up front, the Minister of National Security, whoever he is, and certainly in this case me, has absolutely no control over the police service. So I cannot give the police commissioner instructions as to how to deal with his service operationally. The same applies to the Chief of Defence Staff. Yes, he's my friend, but I can't tell Major General Mirage this is what the Defence Force must do operationally. The Commissioner of Police, the acting Commissioner of Police, Stephen Williams, was not available. He was out of the country when this happened. And the person I spoke with was Anne-Marie Allen Daly.
She was the acting.
Yeah, lovely lady. Very cool, very calm. And, of course, she didn't know what was taking place on the 23rd and found out, like most of us, after the fact. And she, too, was surprised. I was getting calls left, right, and center from everybody. And I felt very silly not having had any prior knowledge. It really feels funny. It feels strange. When I heard what was happening, by that time I had contacted the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister wanted things back to normal as soon as possible. And the Prime Minister is not going to instruct me to instruct the police. Prime Minister gave her feelings. I interpreted that feelings that she wanted things to cease immediately. When I spoke with Alan after that, and she said, yes, Mr. Minister, I've just spoken to my deputies, and they will speak to the senior superintendents who are the heads of the divisions. And she has instructed them to cease all roadblock operations. That took some time in getting to everybody, but it stopped eventually.
The clan present danger you referred to, you said it's because a couple of junior officers were able to take command of places that hitherto their seniors should be in charge of. I'm also struck by one of the points made by ACP Vincent Edwards, where he said that one of the major areas of failure is the state's system of intelligence gathering. That is just as dangerous as anything else, because the foundation, the bedrock of any enforcement, of any information, of any enforcement is intelligence gathering.
And the leading intelligence agency in the police service, at least, at any rate, is Special Branch. Special Branch didn't say a thing.
Well, there is something in the Special Branch area that I found disturbing, because it is alleged someone in the Special Branch was part of this.
And that too, and then even when Edwards went to make did his investigation, the head of the Special Branch, I think her name is Ola Christopher,
refused to
said
cooperate.
she's not cooperating.
Now, by law, can she not cooperate? Or is it because she was of like rank she could have refused? Or is there legislation in the statutes that say that Special Branch, because of the nature of what they do as the elite unit, they are not answerable to this commission?
You remember the person, Vincent Edwards, was sent by the commissioner, the acting commissioner, Steve Williams. So here is the head of the police service telling somebody, another assistant commissioner, you go and do this and do that and report back to me and so on. So he goes doing his business, goes to the head of the Special Branch, who says, what's the effect? You can't talk to me because you're junior to me. And no, that to me makes no sense. It's absolute nonsense. And so that lack of cooperation is something that the police commissioner has to deal with. Things seem to be not too nice in the police service as I speak. I don't want to say things are bad, but they have their own little issues and their own little challenges, and they have to sort out their business.
I did ask you about the clear and present danger and what can be done about it. You responded by saying it is not under your immediate purview, but I'm sure you're going to make recommendations. What recommendations would you make in light of what the Minister of National Security calls a clear and present danger? It is somebody you're dealing with. You are part of the cabinet. What recommendations would you make? Make to your cabinet so that the relevant person can tell the Commissioner of Police this is what has to be done.
I think we need to wait until the Commission of Inquiry, which the police have recommended themselves. They want to have this inquiry to deal with all matters that are unpleasant, including what happened on the 23rd. So I don't want as the minister to say this is what must happen. I have in my mind what I think should happen, but I have not yet discussed that with my cabinet colleagues. And I don't want to make that decision.
Well, might I just add that this is nothing new in the sense that back in the 90s, if you remember when the Scotland Yard detectives came down here to do an investigation into allegations of a drug cartel in the TNT Police Service, first made known by former Assistant Commissioner Rodwell Murray. And when they went to one officer's home, they went to investigate, they were turned away, they were shooed away, they were pushed away, they said no way. So the police were not cooperating with that investigation. So this, in a sense, is not really new. I'm sorry that you have a very deep-rooted problem that you have inherited.
But not really problem. There are some challenges. I didn't know, for instance, that Inspector Alexander, beyond the tape, I did not know that he had the blessing, if you will, of the Commissioner of Police. It's a police program.
It is a police program.
I didn't know that. I really didn't. And so when I heard that, I said, but how could he be on a police program and he seemed to be saying things that are not in
consistent
favor
with what the commissioner is saying?
I couldn't understand that part. So maybe the commissioner needs to have a deep, strong look at what he does and what he says. and take him off the program.
You are going to have to take a very strong look at what we had a conversation about last week, which is the question of ISIS. The question of security here, of young men, of people leaving Trinidad and Tobago, people passing from other places through Trinidad and Tobago out. How are you facing that situation?
Well, once a person is deemed a terrorist, if that person is deemed a terrorist, then we can debar that person from coming back to his own country. But that person must be deemed a terrorist. So if that person right now goes wherever and he's not deemed a terrorist, that person who has gone to ISIS can come back here.
Oh, no, I just want to ask this. You say that a national of Trinidad and Tobago deemed a terrorist can be barred from returning to Trinidad and Tobago. So where is he supposed to be if he's not killed in the field of battle?
Where does he go?
Yes.
I have no idea. I have no answer to that one. But I have been advised that a person who is deemed a terrorist can be debarred from his own country.
Folks are saying that our monitoring is not very good. How can citizens feel comfortable that we have mechanism in place for monitoring this movement of people going out to ISIS?
I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's good.
And what about coming back, returning? Because at least we had earlier this week one report that surfaced online, and I don't know if it was actually true, that some Muslim dressed persons coming into Piarco Airport were detained. Were you aware of that?
Yes, there were seven, was it? I think
yes,
that's
detained.
They weren't detained. They were probably held back for a little while, but they're allowed to come in.
Yeah.
Yes, eventually.
Okay, we had a discussion last week with a Trinidadian now based in, well, he was in the coup, Hassan Anibuele, you would know them all.
Right.
And he was telling us about how many Trinidadians are going to Syria. And speaking of what your exact words, clear and present danger of them, any one of them returning at all. At a certain point in the discussion, he alluded and he admitted that Muslim leaders in Trinidad have lost hold of their congregation because the young ones are leaving by droves.
Mm-hmm.
And he suggested that the Prime Minister should get down and meet with them, which I don't know, that's a question for her to answer. How would you approach this? Because this isn't just, ISIS is just not a criminal thing. It's a social problem. Because it's also, there's radical Islam in jail. These guys come out, they see nothing here, nothing in the criminal landscape that can keep them going or anything like that. So they head out, and they also offered money. How would you deal with it? How do you see it?
Well, I don't think, I don't want to talk for the Prime Minister, but and the suggestion is that she should meet with them.
Yeah, that's what he was saying, yeah. With local Muslim leaders, and I think that would go across the board to all, not just any radical element per se, because it is happening from any mosque.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I would not want to recommend that she meet with them, but again, that's the Prime Minister's call. I would not tell the Prime Minister to go right or left. But that's my gut feeling is that she ought not to. I wouldn't want to meet with them right now, anyhow.
But how would you solve this? How would you because it's a social situation as well.
We'll need all the info we can get, all the intelligence we can get from Special Branch and the SSA and our intelligence agencies to decide on a way forward. I don't just want to be on my own saying this is what must happen. I need to be fed information. I need to be fed intelligence before I can advise on what we should do.
Okay, but one gets the feeling that because there's a CARICOM U.S. Security Summit coming up in June, and the U.S. has taken the hold on us, that our intelligence is much malfunctioning because the U.S. has to come in and show us what is happening on our shores?
Well, we can do with all the help we can get. So if the Americans want to help us, or the British, or anybody for that matter, wants to help and they can help, yes, we'd like to have them.
Okay, and how are you preparing? In what context are you preparing for this summit in June? Are we, Trinidad, preparing for it?
I know there are discussions going on. I'm not privy to some of them, or most of them. But I know we are preparing, and I know our intelligence agencies are trying to get on top of the situation. And I know we have to beef up our security as much as we can. By that time, we should have some additional assets to our security forces. The vessels that you keep hearing about, a couple of them are on their way. Those armored cars that you hear about, they should be on their way shortly. So the there is that effort, that requirement, if you will, to beef up our security for that event.
The voice that you're hearing is that of Senator and Honorable Minister of National Security, Brigadier General Carl Alfonso. Unfortunately, we have wrapped into a lot of our time. I'm begging you to come back because we focused ourselves on the issues of 1970, and that picked up a decent amount of time, deservingly so, because we threshold the 45th anniversary of it. But in your capacity as Minister of National Security, we have a number of questions. I do. And specifically in the area of, we've got a 1 in 10 persons in Trinidad and Tobago said to be here illegally. We've got some serious problems on that issue.
A lot of illegal people.
I'm finding that out. And we want to also talk to you about what kind of control we have with the amount of drugs coming in and out of our country. So you see, I've got a full plate across here for my next brunch.
You know, when I fly over the country from time to time, I will, every now and then I want to go up in the helicopter and just look around. The last time I did it was that last holiday there. So I'll check the roadways and the beaches and all those crowded areas. And it looks so easy for someone to drop off any sort of drugs in just about any part of Trinidad with all these little inlets and coves and so on.
Is it informing you on some solutions you will?
It is a difficult situation. And our borders clearly need to be better secured,
Protected.
and that is why we're getting those additional vessels that have been recommended for over the years.
How soon can you expect those?
So we will feel a little more comfortable over the next few months.
How soon are you expecting these new
The
vessels?
first 2 vessels I think should be here by the end of, I think it's the end of May. The end of May.
Armored cars, when are they going to be here?
By July. By July, the others should be here.
Okay.
By July. Minister, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. Thank you for reminiscing and giving us context on 70 and bringing us into where we are today.
I enjoyed talking to Raf. As I said, he was my platoon commander. I was the sergeant assigned to guide him on the straight and narrow. And I keep telling him, sometimes I blame myself.
I may ask you, how did that work out for you?
No, when I left, up to when I left here on the 23rd of November 1969, things were okay.
Oh, I see. So you clear your hands on that.
So I keep telling him, I just turned my back for 2 minutes again. So.
And you get in trouble.
And of course, may I add, off the record, before we came back on with him while you were playing ads, Mr. Bishop, he was saying, no, he would not have taken part in the mutiny. So the fact that he was in Canada, Raf got a chance to, you know.
Yeah.
Well, there's always a problem with Monday morning quarterbacking. Sorry, Mr. Minister.
No, I condemn the mutiny.
Yes.
I didn't know what caused it, but I knew the rumbling. I keep telling Raf, had I been here, I might have been able to dissuade you from going in that direction. That's just how I feel.
The country evolved, and many people will argue grew up as a result of that socially, surely. Yeah. So everything sometimes happens for a reason. I'm sure it does. Thank you very much for being with us this morning.
You're most welcome.
Take it.